Journey seasonal right around the corner, let me put you on to a slightly hidden gem, a well-known secret if you will. My name is Boulevard here for GiantSlayerTV, and while there's still just enough time for you to be questioning your seasonal lineup, I simply want to slide you a note that says Kindred Viego. Now, a common term often thrown around in Legends of Runeterra is a backline unit, a term referring to champions who have strong continuous or triggered abilities or passive level up conditions that require them to be on field. The most notorious example of this is probably Twisted Fate. As a 2-2, you're unlikely to be sending him into combat too often. You'd much rather have him sit on your bench, backline, whatever you want to call it, while he lays low and accrues value. Vandal City Mayor, Mountain Scryer, Black Market Merchant, these are all examples of backline units. We don't really have a term for the opposite, units you want to send into combat at every opportunity like Shen or Anivia, and we certainly don't have a term for those who sit in the middle like Kindred and Viego. While both of these champions have incredibly powerful on-field abilities akin to backline champions, they also have enough evasion to be used in combat thanks to Kindred's quick attack and Viego's fearsome paired with his ability to grow incredibly large. Now, I wish this is where I told you that this deck is an extension of the flexibility of these champions, but that's not exactly true. It was more to highlight how powerful your central pieces are. And of course, while Thresh is still an option over Kindred, that feels more like a meta call than a stylistic preference, and most people seem to agree that the meta currently calls for Kindred. As for the other central pieces of this deck, there are quite a few different builds of Kindred Viego floating around right now, and the only followers that all of them can seem to agree on are 3 copies of Invasive Hydrovine and 3 copies of Camivore and Soldier. They help the deck run smoothly, grow Viego, feed into his level up condition, wall up to take you into the late game, provide syncopation targets, provide large and hard to disrupt Glimpse Beyond targets. Now the spells are a little bit more streamlined. Glimpse Beyond, Vile Feast, of course Syncopation, Deny, Spirit's Refuge, Vengeance, and then you will either see Concussive Palm or Will of Ionia, sometimes both, as this deck is pretty good at building a growing wall thanks to the encroaching mists, making cards like Withering Wail less appealing en masse, and leading players to instead look for single target stall to help deal with things that get around your wall like elusives, vis-a-vis Concussive Palm or Will of Ionia. For the specifics, let's take a look at the 3 different builds we've seen pop up. The first one runs some self-sacrifice cards like Ravenous Butcher and the Wings in the Wave to help you consistently proc Kindred or just make permanent units out of your encroaching mists to maintain a sturdier wall before you get down Hydrovine. It also gives you the option to play more aggressively, which is why this is the only build that we currently see running Atrocity, even though your champions can grow to be out of hand. If you have a 10 plus attack Viego, you probably don't need to chuck it at the Nexus most of the time, you're probably winning that one anyway. But if you can get in a few Butcher hits and Mists hits and get your opponent down into Hydrovine range by the time you summon it, suddenly Atrocity looks a little more appealing. All of that said, this is personally my least favorite build of the deck. Another option, and one that took second place at a Road to Seasonal tournament hosted by Mastering Runeterra, streamlines its follower lineup down to 4 different ones. We have the Soldier, the Invasive Hydrovine, the Greenglade Lookout, and the newly buffed Scales of the Dragon. This is actually only 2 followers less than the previous build, so you're not really trading out units for spells in a big way, but the lower unit count does make Concussive Palm a potentially more appealing option than Will of Ionia. Now, Lookout is a classic in this deck, being that it can be used to get down earlier Hydrovines or Viegos, just have a little bit more mana to play with and hold in reserve for protection spells, and Scales is something that was recently buffed in patch 3.6, where Dragon's Protection went from a slow speed permanent 3 health buff to a focus speed 3 additional health, which was a big change for the deck and now is a nice appealing option in the 3-drop spot for Ionia. The last version is the Team Ninetales Special, where a very respectful of aggro version of the deck, playing things like Hapless Aristocrat and Tasty Feyfolk. I've even seen some of these players with Fading Icon in the build. It's a testament to how much you can tech out the follower lineup, since the only musts are Camivore and Soldier and Invasive Hydrovine. When teching out your own version of the deck, be sure to keep an eye on how many 3-cost followers you are running, as Camivore and Soldier is a must, and then you don't want to overload on your Fey Folk, Scales, and Shadow Assassins, lest you run into awkward hands. They each serve very different purposes, and you'll need to have an honest conversation with yourself about how greedy you want to be with your build. I think full greed is something like Shadow Assassins and Greenglade Lookouts, while the least amount of greed is more like the Ninetales version with Hapless and Fey Folk. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the general strategy of the deck is pretty straightforward. You want to wall up with your followers, get your champions on the field, and protect them with your Ionia package, and remove anything you can't wall out with your heavy-hitting spells. Viego's level up is probably akin to that of Misfortune in that you're going to win almost all of the games where you can make it happen, so that is the ultimate goal, but not necessary for the win, as Kindred can easily outgrind a deck, or Invasive Hydrovine can solo carry you if left alone. If you can't draw and stick at least one of those 9 threats, then you are probably going to lose that game, but that's why you have so much stall power to make sure that you get there. Now, I understand this isn't the most popular deck, and neither of these champions really see much play outside of this exact combination, and they're rather complicated cards with unique mechanics and combos, so I want to highlight some of their less intuitive mechanics to show off some of the cool things you can do so that you don't have to figure it out yourself the first time that you play this deck. Let's start with Kindred, who will mark the weakest enemy the first time you slay a unit each round and kill that marked unit at the end of the round. On their level 2 side, they do the exact same thing, except now they grow +2/+2 the first time you slay a unit each round. Having quick attack on Kindred allows you to attack with them every round, and more often than not is going to result in 4 damage at the enemy nexus, as chump blocking Kindred means applying a mark to the weakest enemy unit and killing that as well, and just like that your Kindred is halfway leveled, therefore not a very enticing block for your opponent. 2 important notes about Kindred off the jump is that it will apply the mark by slaying your own units, so Glimpse Beyond is good to go, and you do not have to kill the marked unit with the end of round ability in order to progress Kindred's level up. If your opponent's weakest unit is a tie, Kindred picks randomly, but you can hover the Oracle's Eye with a slay spell on the stack to see which unit the mark will be applied to, as seen here. Because Kindred's effect does not use the stack, it will go through spell shields and kill the units at the end of the round. Now, like Aphelios, Kindred's level 2 ability is the same as their level 1 ability, which means it gets to reset when they level up. This means you can slay a unit, slay the marked unit to level up Kindred, and then slay another unit in order to mark a second unit that turn and kill it at the end of the round. I know it sounds a little complicated to set up, but if your opponent is attacking with all of their units, it is very doable and will completely swing the board state into your favor. If you were missing Ruination from your Shadow Isle control deck, this is what you have instead. And finally, you can do some tricky things with Kindred's spell, Spirit's Journey. If you haven't played this card before, you can effectively use it as a stun in combat, you can use it to dodge removal on your own units as a protection spell, all while proccing Slay because you have to have Kindred on the field in order to have Spirit's Journey in your hand. Now, if your opponent only has one unit, Spirit Journeying it will not mark it. Perhaps my favorite use case, though, is that if you steal a follower with Viego, you can cast Spirit's Journey on it to take control of it permanently, as it will destroy it, resummon it as a new unit no longer affected by Viego's ability. This will, of course, also proc Kindred's effect, giving you a few cool ways to build your own board wipe. Viego's interactions aren't quite as flashy, but perhaps the most pivotal one to know is how he interacts with Encroaching Mists. Viego summons an Encroaching Mists the first time an ally dies each round, so here's a common scenario. You have out Viego, and you summon Camavoran Soldier, which summons an Encroaching Mists. If you end the turn, the ephemeral Encroaching Mists will die in what is known in most card games as the cleanup phase portion of the end of round procedures. The mists will die, Viego will summon another mist as a result, but since the cleanup phase has already happened, this new ephemeral unit missed its window to die and will persist into the next turn. If you end your turn with that ephemeral unit on board, this train will continue as that mist was technically summoned in the previous round, making it the first unit to die this round. If you do this combo with Invasive Hydrovine, you will not only get the mists from Viego, but you'll continuously get round start mists from Hydrovine as well, giving you 2 mists each turn, assuming nothing else procs Viego's effect that round, making it extremely quick to level Viego if you continuously pass back and forth, which shouldn't be too hard given your 2 encroaching mists dissuading aggression. The best part, of course, is that if this loop breaks, it can set itself back up the first round something else doesn't proc Viego's effect before the mist dies at end of round. And there you have it. You have the baseline knowledge to play Viego Kindred at a competent level. Like I said, there are some complex interactions, some weird mechanisms of Legends of Runeterra that you need to know to play this deck at the absolute highest level, but I believe in you, even though I have absolutely no reason to, if you do want to last minute decide to add this deck to your seasonal lineup. Now, let me know in the comments down below what deck you think is going to be the dark horse of the weekend, as this is sort of my pick going into things. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the little bell icon to stay up to date on when we're posting new content. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I have been Boulevard for GiantSlayerTV. Good luck in the seasonal, everyone.